For the second straight year, Boston College earns a bowl game, but will not attend a bowl game because of COVID. Today, we're going to talk all about the Military Bowl and everything that happened on Sunday. All of this and more on today's Locked On Boston College.
You are Locked On Boston College, your daily podcast on the Boston College Eagles, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
This is Locked On Boston College. Today's episode is brought to you by Sonos. Sonos is the official sponsor of ESPN College Football. Go to Sonos.com to learn more. All right, so here we go. On Sunday, Boston College and ECU were scheduled to have a game on Monday, and we got the news early on Sunday that the game was going to be canceled. Now, I have to say, I got a notification on Sunday evening, like really, really early, that this game was going to be canceled. Someone had said to me, hey, I got someone in the band and they're saying that the game's not going to happen. And boom, I was like, yeah, it's going to happen. They were just practicing yesterday. Well, 40 players were out, causing Boston College to cancel the game. And basically ECU fans, we'll get into that in a little bit too, but I'm joined by Mitch Wolf, who's going to talk to us to preview the game, but he's here to talk about something else. Mitch, how's it going?
Yeah, I was planning on driving tonight at least halfway to Annapolis to go to the game tomorrow, but now I'm not. And it's kind of nice because I have a day off of work tomorrow that I planned, and now I can kind of run some errands to get all that stuff done post-Christmas. But yeah, this kind of sucks.
Yeah, it does. I have to say, my wife's birthday is tomorrow. So I kind of got out of jail a little bit here because she was like, I took day off from work and you're watching football all day. Yeah. So I kind of got myself out of jail, but that's not the point here. Anyways, so Sunday morning, the news leaks out from Brett McMurphy and the usual gang of suspects that get out.
To give credit, I think it was a guy. I'm not sure exactly where he works, but I think he's an ECU beat writer for somewhere.
Oh, Stephen Ingo.
Stephen,
yeah,
that's it. Yep. Okay.
Yep.
Just wanted to give proper credit to beat guys and all that.
Yep. And he's saying, the buzz started coming that BC was going to cancel the game, that they had too many COVID cases on campus, and boom, it's gone. So, Mitch, what was your initial reaction when you heard the news?
I think you sent it to me, and I was just like, wait, seriously? Because it's just like it's just annoying. And I think and we'll get into it a little later, but that's why so many ECU fans were upset that you do make these plans to go to a game, and for BC, this was kind of an opportunity to, for lack of a better term, like kind of cleanse the demons that plagued a big part of the season, just with injuries and the flu. Hoping that you can kind of have this good bowl game and use that as a springboard into a good off season and then to a good 2022 season. And now it's just kind of doesn't happen. And it's kind of like last year where they didn't go to a bowl game. In 2018, their bowl game got canceled a quarter into it. So it's just kind of a long running, almost a bit at this point where BC just can't play a normal bowl game.
Yeah.
So it's just annoying.
So let me go over what the seniors that are graduating have gone through in terms of bowl eligibility. 2018, the First Responders Bowl is canceled due to lightning. That was the game in Texas against Boise State. First game. 2019/2020. I think it was actually in 2020, wasn't it? That was the game Richie Gunnell was coaching because Steve Adazio got fired, and BC ran into Cincinnati, who was on their ascension into a playoff team.
Not to mention a 2-hour lightning delay.
Yeah, and a lightning delay on top of that. Totally forgot about that. 2020, they didn't play because Hafley didn't want to, force the players to stay in COVID regulations anymore. 2021, COVID outbreak. And that's not even including, I think it was 2017, which was the Ice Bowl at the Pinstripe Bowl against Iowa.
I was there. I've never seen this before, but in our stands, the beers that we had froze. It was that cold. And I think on that field, they had the, oh man, it's like a 40s NFL championship story where the players switched cleats at halftime because they switched from cleats to sneakers so they could run on the ice that was on the field. But yeah, again, like BC has just not played a normal, 60 minutes, decent weather bowl game since
2016,
since the Quick Lane Bowl in 2016.
Yep. Patrick Tolles in Detroit.
Yeah.
So it's been a process, and it I think all in all, the biggest story to come out of this is not the ECU fans griping and moaning about it. We'll get to them in a moment. It's the seniors from Boston College, the guys that have been part of this program for years that wanted to leave, on their own terms, to get a chance to play, to get a chance to get that last win and to host a trophy with Jeff Halfley. It sucks. This is the second year in a row that they're going to be kind of held out of that. And, you look at what they did, and I'm not going to get into the specifics of COVID, but I don't know. It just seems to me that, these players, they're all vaccinated. You're at Boston College. You have to be vaccinated. They're at 100% vaccination rate. They had been following protocols all year long, and then boom, all of this crap hits them. It just seemed like a really lousy way for a lot of these players to end it.
Yeah, I mean, I maybe you won't get into it. I will. Like you said, 100% vaccination rate. I have to imagine that a lot of these kids got their booster shots, but this Omicron variant seems to be the biggest problem right now. And again, it doesn't seem to be the biggest issue in terms of severity, in terms of hospitalizations and deaths, but it just seems extremely contagious. Which if you get flagged on that, it's not a matter of which variant you have; it's just a matter of if you get flagged for the COVID positive. But it's I have to imagine, a lot of people have been like, oh, like BC relaxed their protocols for COVID, just a few days before their bowl game. And based on how they've handled the last few years, that just doesn't make any logical sense to me why they would do that. And that's why I don't think they did make any changes. I think that this Omicron variant is just very strong in terms of how it is contagious. And I don't think BC relaxed their protocols. There were a few events that the BC team went to. One was a tour of a few museums in Washington, D.C., which I assume, and I think you said were private tours. I don't know if it was an event, but a thing where they were making care packages for troops because the bowl is sponsored by the USO, which again, team private event. And their third event was a team private event that was a dinner at a restaurant/bar. Which it's a team private event. So assumingly everybody there is vaccinated. And a lot of them are boosted. So, I think it just seems ridiculous to assume that BC relaxed their protocols and that's what caused this COVID outbreak. And, I've seen ECU fans say that. I've seen even some BC fans say that. And I don't think that's the case.
Yeah, and you just need to look at the incubation rate for COVID. It doesn't make any sense. Like the one event that I saw that I was like, ooh, maybe BC shouldn't have done that was the USO event. Yes. But that was yesterday. Mm-hmm. If we followed any science from what's going on with COVID, you don't get COVID the day after something happens. And on top of that, if we have ECU fans listening to this, because I know they're probably, some of them are pissed off about this. Listen to what the ECU AD said. He's been talking about this with Pat Kraft for days. This isn't a new thing. This is something that's been going on for a while. And so, we'll get into the ECU piece of this, but this wasn't something that happened because they wrapped care packages with the USO. This had been something that happened. I don't know if it was when they got on the planes, before the planes. It just seemed like we just had to kind of get our perspective, because as I just said, the ECU AD said that he had talked to Pat Kraft over the last couple of days to see if this game would actually happen.
Yeah. And I mean, that's a big part of it too, is that, assumedly BC has been having, some of these COVID issues for the past few days. And if they had canceled, a few days ago before they got on the planes, if they had canceled today, they would have been getting stuff from people, ECU fans. It's like, it doesn't matter whether you cancel the day before or a week before, you're going to get criticized. But, it is frustrating. And, I just don't think that the COVID issue, it's just happening to everybody. Like like the NHL shut down because they just couldn't control it. And it's just like, all right, we're just going to pause. We're going to, wait for it to kind of blow over. The NFL has kind of changed their protocols for who is testing positive versus who is asymptomatic for all this stuff. The NBA is trotting out some, bench warmers is putting it lightly out in the court recently. The NFL is doing the same too.
Joe Johnson's playing for the first time in 3 years for the Celtics.
Yeah, exactly. All this stuff is just like, it's just affecting everybody in a ridiculous way recently. And again, like, luckily this variant doesn't seem to be the most severe in terms of hospitalizations and deaths. But it's just spreading. And, I think a lot of leagues are going to adjust to how this variant is affecting people and how they're, testing positives and asymptomatics and all that. But yeah, I mean, like AJ, like you said, like it really does suck for the seniors, guys like Ben Petrula, guys who've been around this program a long time. Even some of the guys who, we kind of figured we're going to opt out, like Alec Lindstrom, Zion Johnson, Brandon Sebastian. But guys like Marcus Valdez or Brandon Barlow or guys like that who have just been around, Travis Levy, who have been, stalwarts of this program through.
Your favorite, Mike Palmer.
Oh yeah, of course. Goes the guys who have been, stalwarts of this program. They've had their ups and downs as players, but they've touched it out through a coaching change, through a global pandemic, and they don't get a chance to kind of put a bow on their BC careers. And objectively, that just sucks for them, and it does suck for the ECU players as well. For the ECU seniors as well.
All right, in a moment, I'm going to talk about those ECU players, and I talk about their fans specifically, and some of the coaching staff, which hasn't done a very good job of keeping their mouths shut. So in a moment, we'll talk a little bit about that. This holiday season, grab the protein bar that tastes like a candy bar, or even better than a candy bar. It's the Built Bar, filled with so much holiday goodness, rich with decadent flavor, covered in chocolate, but amazingly low in calories, sugar, net carbs, and fat, and high in protein. You get the best of both worlds. It's delicious and healthy. With so many flavors, you'll have a hard time choosing. Will you have raspberry or brownie, cherry or chocolate, double chocolate, cookies and cream, or peanut brownie, or some of the specialty flavors? There's so many goods you have to try out. And there's marshmallowy treats around the holidays that are some of the best Built Bars I think I've ever tried. They're called the Built Bar Puffs. They're light, fluffy, and marshmallowy through and through. You would never believe that these are actually protein bars. They just taste so good. Now, if you go to Built.com, use promo code LOCK15 and you'll get 15% off your order. Again, go to Built.com, use promo code LOCK15 and you'll get 15% off your order. This is Locked On Boston College. AJ Black here. We're talking about the cancellation of the bowl game. This is the second year in a row Boston College is not going to be attending a bowl game. This one's a little later in the season, in the process than it was before. Boston College obviously was in Washington, D.C. when they had to pull the plug. Now, BC is the third ACC team, one of three teams, that has already canceled. So we had Virginia cancel on Sunday as well. And after Boston College canceled, we also heard about Miami, who canceled for the Sun Bowl. Now, obviously a team that could fill that ranks is ECU. ECU had 5 positive cases on their team, which they're pumping their chests about being, really good about that. And that's great for them. Good for them. Now, my biggest issue is not that. It is not even just their fans, but the first thing that popped on my screen when I was looking at this news was not the fans, not their podcasters, which we'll get to in a second, was Holton Ahlers, their quarterback, calling BC soft. And I want to get into this a little bit because I think it's absolute crap that ECU and their fans are pulling this, because BC, the players themselves, did nothing. They had nothing to do with the decision being made. That was Pat Kraft. That was the ACC. That was everything above them. They had nothing to do with that. And they made decisions, and the players had done everything that was asked of them. They were vaccinated. Many of them were boosted. This is a crappy situation caused by a variant of this disease that they couldn't have done anything about. And I don't know what ECU's testing policy is. I'm not going to get into that, but I thought it was absolute crap that they were doing that. And not only Holton Ahlers, his dad, I saw on Twitter going nuts too, calling out everyone and everyone in between. It was just it was asinine. It was unbelievably immature and completely just selfish and stupid. So I wanted to get this out because I'd been sitting with this all day listening to these, and I get that they're angry because they don't get to play, but taking it out on Boston College is stupid and completely ignorant. So Mitch, I don't know if you have anything you want to add to my rant, but go ahead.
Yeah, there's a few angles I want to take with this. And I think the first one I'll take is probably the most, mature, I guess. So if you think back to when BC had the first responder bowl that got canceled because of lightning, you saw some BC players kind of chirping at Boise State for allegedly not wanting to play. And that, I think that's fine because it's the weather. It's really out of everybody's control. So you can you can do whatever you want. Like it's literally it's nobody's fault, but maybe God, if you believe that. And So I think that is one thing. And this today, you saw, like you mentioned, the Holt Naylor's tweet about calling BC soft. You saw some other ECU players say some things about BC being afraid to play ECU, a 7-5 AAC team that, as the Boneyard podcast said, kind of beat the teams they were expected to and lost to the teams they expected to as well. It's not like this was, a world beater of a team. I do think ECU presented an interesting matchup for BC. I think, I'm biased, BC had a good chance of beating them, but I could have seen ECU beating BC as well. But the way that a lot of ECU fans reacted to this was, I thought, unfair and, somewhat patently ridiculous. You mentioned Holt Naylor's father, who's the PA announcer for ECU football. He called out Alec Lindstrom for posting his declaring for the NFL draft statement pretty recently after the bowl game was decided. And I think a big part of that, the decision of that play was the sickness and death of Alec Lindstrom's mother, which, Holt Naylor's father posted some tweet kind of calling out Lindstrom for having this statement prepared so quickly. Of course, he didn't do the research and found out that the biggest reason why he was going to probably opt out of the bowl game was because of his mother's illness and death, and he quickly deleted the tweet. So that's one thing. But the other problem was that, some of the BC players, and I honestly respect them for doing this, was coming back at the ECU players saying, like, listen, we would have beaten you on the field if we could play, and kind of allowing themselves to be ratioed on Twitter. Because they couldn't really play the game because of these COVID issues. And, you could kind of draw a connection between the BC players and their experience with Boise State and the First Responder Bowl and this. But there's a big difference between a game being canceled for weather and a game being canceled for a team having these COVID issues. I think there's a big difference. And, I think that it's ridiculous to be making fun of, criticizing a team for having this COVID outbreak when, again, they have done everything right to this point. And you've kind of mentioned this with the basketball team. They have done almost as much as they could to prevent these kind of things. But, sometimes things just don't break your way. And, there was the number mentioned, 40 people, and that's not necessarily positive cases. It also takes into account opt-outs and transfers. And even with that, that's probably still about 30, maybe 35 players out. And ostensibly it was a full position group, which, if I had to guess, was either offensive line or cornerbacks. And I tweeted this earlier, like, ask ECU fans, would you want to play a game where your entire offensive line or your entire cornerback room was out due to COVID? I don't think you would. So, I would ask that, maybe think of this if the proverbial shoe is on the other proverbial foot, and, maybe have some decency or compassion about this, because, and I'm not going to let BC fans get out of this either, because I don't think any college football fan base would kind of not react the same way ECU fans did. I think that a lot of fan bases, and this is kind of just how things are with sports in general, is that, they might have come after the other team for, the same thing and reacted the same way the ECU fan base reacted. I hope that BC fans would be better, but I wouldn't expect them to necessarily. So again, it is just kind of a crappy situation, but I think the ECU fan base handled this quite poorly, to be honest.
Yeah, I think the position, it was Pete Thamel that tweeted that out. And if Pete Thamel tweets it out, it's as good as gold, because, Boston College is sending him the information. But he did tweet out that the 40 players that were out. And again, that, to be specific, that wasn't all COVID guys. That was people that could be held out, like Alec Lindstrom because of his mom, or a few other things, like Zion Johnson, I had been told wasn't going to play because he was going to be getting ready for the NFL draft. So there was a few guys that were out for a few things, but the vast majority of that was because of COVID.
Before you continue, I do want to address that, because some ECU fans were like, oh, like, how could we not know that, like, some of these players were opting out? It's like, that is a strategical advantage that the program is deciding to take. Like you said, we ostensibly knew that Zion Johnson was opting out. We were pretty clued into Alec Lindstrom opting out. We kind of assumed that Brandon Sebastian might be opting out. The BC program does not need to release that information until, a few minutes before the game starts. That is a competitive advantage that
Hafley's done that for years.
Exactly. And, if ECU could consistently produce NFL talent, I'm sure they would take that advantage as well.
Well, I mean, I don't expect them to know that about Jeff Hafley because when I was on their podcast, they didn't even know who Phil Dracovic was. So that's that's kind of where they're at. So now, just before we get into the third segment of the show, I want to talk about what college football should do moving forward to kind of address the situation. Because I think there's ways to address this that's not just canceling everything that happens. And we'll get to that in a moment. But if you listen to our podcast last week, we had the Boneyard podcast on. Seemed like great guys. They were talking all about, ECU. They talked to me. I mean, I was held on hold for their show, and I listened to them both say how they just thought BC was going to get crushed by ECU. And I was like, okay, whatever, we'll talk about it. And they seemed fine until they just started absolutely going bananas on Twitter at me. And I was like, all right, you guys want that? You guys want to play? We'll play. And it started with them starting off with the tweet, BC is softer than Charmin Ultra, which I responded with, pardon my French, guys, but this is a bull-ass take. And then it just went on from there. Then they said the biggest, I mean, this is pulled out of a certain playbook. I'm not going to get into it. The biggest pile of trash is the elitist in Boston pulling out of that game. The proper protocols were taken. BC knew they were going to get smacked. All right. So
globalists are taking our bowl games.
Yeah, basically that. I mean, it's like, oh, okay, that's the route we're going to talk about. I mean, I felt kind of guilty when they asked me about when I was going to go to the bowl, and I was like, nah, I got a infant at home and she's not vaccinated. So maybe they were just like, I'm sure they were thinking backwards, like, oh man, he's not like, whatever. That's not going to get kids sick, but whatever. And then everything I'm tweeting, these guys are going at me. So I want to apologize, first of all, to anyone out there that had listened to me talk to these dudes. So that was, I try, I'm just going to put this out there. I try to screen out what podcasts I guess on or get guys on ahead of time since the Mizzoucast podcast.
Yeah, so you're 0 for 2 with this season.
Oh no, well, Louisville was good. I had a couple other
and not outside of the Locked On network. That's
Louisville was outside of Locked
okay.
On. That's my SI friends, so I knew them. But yeah, 0 for 2 because I had that Mizzou podcast. I'm sure you guys all remember that.
You're 0 for 2 out of conference.
Yeah, so I want to apologize because, man, I know some of you guys were going at these dudes, and they just actually went to bed because they just tweeted "Good night to everyone, but Boston College and their fans."
I'll say this: they're if they had just stuck with the first tweet where they said like at BC football walk the plank, that's kind of funny because it's like, all right, like we're upset that the bowl game isn't happening, but COVID is what it is. I think that was fine, but after that, they really kind of dove into some waters that a lot of people shouldn't be comfortable diving into. But I digress.
Yeah, and the things that they were telling me that BC was going to get beat by was a quarterback that threw 18 touchdowns to 10 interceptions. Don't really think in the AAC. I don't think that would have been
this.
That big.
This is the one thing that I do want to mention is like a lot of ECU fans were coming at BC for being a quote bottom feeder in the ACC, and like listen, like I will stipulate like BC has not been that good in the ACC for a while, but they had a winning record last season. They've been going to bowl games pretty consistently for the last almost 10 years. A big part of the story about ECU getting this bowl game is this is the first bowl game they've gotten to since, what was it, 2014?
Yep, 7 years.
Like, if you want to talk bottom feeders, like this team recently up jumped from Conference USA to the American Athletic Conference and hasn't made a bowl game that any of their players on their team have been a recruiting class for.
With UConn on their schedule every year, and with an FCS school on their squad every
exactly.
year. They couldn't figure out 4 wins out of that.
Like if you want to talk bottom feeder, like pot calling kettle black, glass or stones, glass houses, use whatever metaphor you want. Like you can't throw bottom feeder at BC, who has been getting to bowl games in a Power 5 conference when you are a G5 conference G5 team who has not been able to figure out how to get 6 wins and get to a bowl game since the second term of the Obama administration. So miss me with that.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's my last.
And I'll say this. I hope I would love for Pat Kraft to hear this. Let's get Maine off this schedule next year. Let's get ECU on our non-conference schedule. Like let's settle. I do want to settle this on the field now. Let's get them on the non-conference schedule next year or in the very near future, please.
Yeah, come on up to Boston. We'll play. I think that's fine. I mean, I'd love to see when you're telling me that your team has trouble with missing coverages, and you're like, oh yeah, we'll just totally wrap up Zay Flowers. Go on, come out to Boston. We'll see how that goes. Now, in our final segment, Mitch and I are going to talk about the state of college football in the COVID-19 issue and what we think may be the next step for the conference, for college football in terms of fixing this issue. But before, BetOnline has covered this holiday season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before as football continues its march through the college bowl season and the college football playoffs. BetOnline remains your number one spot for all the sports action this season. Head to the website or use your mobile interface to sign up today and receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Just use our promo code LOCKEDON to receive your bonus. From basketball, football, NHL, boxing, and UFC right to your favorite Vegas casino games, don't wait to take advantage of all the amazing offers available for the 21 season. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to bet on all your favorite sports. So don't wait to take advantage of all the new amazing offers available. That's BetOnline, where the game starts. This is Locked On Boston College. AJ Black here. I am the editor and publisher of BC Bulletin, part of the Sports Illustrated Network. You can find me at bcbulletin.com. With me, I have Mitch Wolf. We've been talking about the ECU and BC Military Bowl cancellation, and we're now going to talk about what college football has to do. As I mentioned in a previous segment, 3 ACC teams are already out of bowl contention because of COVID protocols. UVA in the bowl game at Fenway is gone. Miami against Sun Bowl is gone. BC against ECU is gone. So that's 3 games. Three of the first games in the ACC bowl selections are all out. Now, Mitch, I want to know your thoughts. Where do we go from here? What do the leagues need to do?
I mean, we've said a lot of things tonight, and I'm not an epidemiologist. I have a master's of science, but it's in sports business, so it's not exactly in a medical field or anything. But this is a tough situation, and we've seen the NFL, we've seen the NBA, we've seen the NHL take kind of vastly different approaches so far, and I'm honestly not sure what they can do. I think that a big part of this is that a lot of these bowl games so far, like, ostensibly don't really matter. These are middling teams playing exhibition games that don't necessarily matter for kind of historical purposes of college football. If this does start to affect the college football playoff, I think that is extremely interesting to see how those teams, the NCAA and their respective conferences, handle that. But, I honestly I think one of the funniest things is that the fact that Washington State, who had to fire a coach for not getting the vaccination, along with multiple assistants for not getting vaccinated, is now the team that is not necessarily affected by COVID in their bowl game, is just the peak of irony in a season of college football that luckily hadn't been super affected by COVID relative to the other professional football leagues or professional sports leagues in general. But I think that little piece is just a beautiful bit of irony that I think I'll appreciate for a long time.
And it's interesting with like a school like Boston College, right? We obviously don't know what the symptomatic versus asymptomatic issues are, and we don't get the whole breakdown of that. We never will. But you hear about it in the NFL, you hear about it in the NBA, that a ton of these guys that are vaccinated, it's all asymptomatic issues. So the NFL already ran this course. They're already going down the line of, if you're asymptomatic and vaccinated, your quarantine time is way shorter. You can come back much quicker and whatnot. You got to think that the NCAA is going to be the next, because you're losing all this money. And this is supporting ECU too, because I know that this is an issue that supports everybody. Like, you lose the bowl game, all conferences that are involved in that bowl lose that pot of money. They're going to start looking at that going, if BC had 30 guys that are positive for COVID, but 23 of them are asymptomatic, can they play with that? And can they put in preventative measures? Like, those guys have to wear masks or whatever on the sidelines, or, they got to be separated in the locker room, or whatever you do to make sure that they're safe. Is that what they have to do to keep these players going, to keep these games going?
Yeah. I mean,
I don't know.
The other part of this is that, like, college football is so decentralized with its power structure. Like, the NCAA does have all this oversight, but they can't really force teams and conferences to really do anything. And obviously there's like this whole bowl structure where, like, the bowls are like their own independent organizations. Like I just think that I think it'll be interesting for the 2022 regular season, which again, like there isn't that like stringent policy, a part of an overarching policy from the NCAA passed down because, they have to deal with, so many schools across different states with different rules, and then private schools, public schools. And, I just think it's just so difficult for the NCAA to really, and this is part of the issue with the NCAA in general, is that they really just don't have any actual power to pass anything that is binding upon their member institutions that the member institutions can't really find a way around. So, I think that they'll kind of let this bowl season figure itself out. Maybe they'll make some changes for how the protocols are treated for the 2022 season. But, we kind of entered this bowl season thinking like, okay, like, these bowl games are going to be played, like there shouldn't be any problems. And, now we're seeing bowl games canceled almost every day. So, things could change by the time we get to the end of the college football playoff and the national championship. And they could obviously be very different even by the time from the time that the season is over to the time we get to the summer. So, I don't think it's wise to make any long-term predictions or even honestly short-term predictions about how the NCAA is going to treat this. And obviously there's the whole issue of the NCAA being a ridiculous institution in of itself. So, I'm not going to try to make any hot takes about what the NCAA is going to do in the coming months or weeks about, COVID in an ever-changing global pandemic.
Right. And I think you're right there, Mitch. Like, it's hard to gauge. I'm just thinking like, with basketball, it just took one game for
that is true. Yeah.
For basketball to just be like, whoa, this is wrong. And they changed everything. Think of all the money they're losing from 3 bowl games already. And they're going to go, oh crap, we got to think of a new way to look at this. And because, the protocols could be, already antiquated. I don't even know because it's, they're, so vague and hard to read that maybe the conference by 2022 is like, okay, this is what the new protocols are going to be. Boom, boom, boom. So all in all, it's a crappy way to end the season. I think fans were waiting for one more game. You wanted to see what Phil Dracovic was going to do with a healthy hand. We've seen all those, clips that BC football put out on Twitter or social media. We were hoping to see, Zay Flowers for one more bowl game before next year. We're not going to get any of that. And now we lose the recruiting pitch to Rutgers, who can now say that they played in a bowl game that Boston College did. Sorry, I had to put that in there.
Listen, I would love to. I mean, I think you said this too. Like, let ECU play Washington State in the Sun Bowl. Let them play. Honestly, kick Rutgers out. Let Wake. Let's see how these ECU fans that think they're a national championship contender. Let's see how they face against Wake Forest, who honestly I think would completely dice them up for probably some score like 56-17 or something. So honestly, get them to a bowl game. I'd like to see them play.
Yeah. Let them. And for a fan base that is empathetic and really compassionate, understands what other people are going through, I really do hope that ECU gets to go to one more bowl game, because their fans and their announcer and their quarterback has shown that they really do epitomize what men and women are for others is about. So to hash this up, Mitch, where can people find you on social media?
You can find me at Mitchell T. Wolf, WOLFE. As the season is now over, we'll be jumping into our postseason recaps of, BC season as to, who was the most improved player, maybe who was the best player. Maybe we'll even rank ECU's most prominent alumni, of which I would imagine number 1 is a retired porn star turned DJ. So maybe we'll get into that.
I'm all about that, Mitch. And if you're a ECU fan that's listened to this whole episode just because you want to hate me, follow me on Twitter, AJ_BC, and I'll make sure I mute you when you send me some obnoxious tweet at me. So thank you all for listening. You can follow me on Twitter at AJ_BC. You can follow me on my site, bcbulletin.com. Or if you really want to talk, and hey, ECU fans, if you're out there, head on over to Maroon and Gold forums. And I'm sure there's some self-hating BC fans out there that you could probably get along with. Head on over there too, and you can sign up for a free account. This is AJ Black, Locked On Boston College. We're going to be doing this every day. I'm going to be transitioning more to recruiting and basketball. Hopefully basketball continues to play as we kind of get away from football, but I'll still be doing football coverage. I mean, it's only like a month and a half until spring football starts. So we'll be getting into all that here on the show. Thank you all for listening. I hope you had a great and Merry Christmas, and we'll see you again tomorrow for another episode. Take care, everyone.